Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. This is Michelle Benjamin from AUDIENCEX. I am here with Kelly Wiethuchter. We're here to talk about the top programmatic targeting strategies for 2021. Before we dive into that topic, we're going to give everybody a minute to join because sometimes it takes a few minutes. We've got quite a few people registered today. So just some housekeeping while everyone's joining, which I will repeat again at the end. But if you have any questions at any point, feel free to use either the chat box or the Q&A and we will answer them at the end. We are recording this and we will be sending it out in case you're not listening live right now and want to hear it or want to see it again. So those are basically our most frequently asked questions. And let's see, Kelly, before we get started, what should we talk about? We've got some big AUDIENCEX news this morning.
Let's share the news.
Yeah, the big news. AUDIENCEX has acquired Big Buzz Marketing Group, an agency based out of New York. We're very excited. This story went live in Campaign US this morning. There's also a press release and it's on our blog and all over, and you'll probably be hearing from us as we are very excited to grow and expand our services and offerings.
Yeah, we have a great new team of colleagues up in New York. Had a call with one of them this morning and learned all sorts of new things that I didn't know before. So it'll be fun to have them on the team and, like you said, expand our offerings and new solutions for our clients.
Definitely better together, which is awesome. All right, it's 11:02. Let's do this. All right, so back to the topic, just in case you missed it. This is the top programmatic targeting strategies for 2021. Our presenter today is Miss Kelly Wiethuchter. She has been around. She knows everything about programmatic. I'm sure many of you may have talked to her. It sounded really wrong. I'm sorry. She knows a lot about campaign strategy and programmatic targeting strategies, and that's what we're here to talk about, all the different tactics and strategies you can use. And with that, if you have any questions, again, feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A. And Kelly, I'll pass it off to you.
Great. Thank you so much. So yes, as Michelle said, I have been in the programmatic space for quite some time, 8 years now, working at a variety of different DSPs, now at AUDIENCEX for the past 3.5 years. So I've seen a lot in the programmatic space. I've seen a lot of tactics come into play and change throughout the years, and they're going to continue to change. I'm sure many of you guys had attended our last webinar just a couple weeks ago about the deprecation of cookies. And so we are going to touch a little bit about the different targeting tactics that are viable now, but might be going away in 2022. So taking a look at the agenda, we're first going to talk about why is targeting so important? And I'm sure you guys are all rolling your eyes. Yes, of course you know, but we'll still review the high points. Next, we'll go into those targeting strategies that you can employ now or later. And then finally, as Michelle said, go ahead and throw questions into the Q&A box. We'll get to them at the end. So here we go. So your campaign is only as good as your targeting strategy. You know, I've said this for years. I can put together the best media strategy, but if the creative is, not very appealing, the campaign's going to fall flat. Conversely, I could also have the most beautiful, Cannes award-winning creative, but if we have a media strategy that's not highly targeted and relevant to that audience, it's also going to fall flat. So making sure that you're building out your programmatic strategies and being really thoughtful about which targeting tactics are important for the campaign. And you also don't want to throw every targeting tactic at your campaign because then you might be spreading your budget a little too thin. So really, let's take a look and see which ones are going to be most meaningful, which tactics are actually going to move the needle. So let's get into it. Top targeting strategies. Number one, starting with my favorite lookalike modeling or lookalike prospecting. So this is a tactic that can be used on every single campaign, and I highly recommend that you request lookalike modeling pixels from your DSP partner right now. By appending those pixels to your client site, we learn about users who are coming to the site and maybe making a conversion. Possibly it's a sales conversion. Maybe it's a lead generation conversion. But we want to be able to use the DSP's AI to find and prospect more users who looked and act similar to those who are currently converting onto the site. What's also great about lookalike modeling is it's not going to be impacted by the removal of third-party cookies. So if you're not using lookalike modeling, step one, get on it today. And you can put pixels on the site really early in advance to when a campaign is going to launch. That way it's going to give the AI time to really build out that model and make it really robust. So when you do go live, you can activate against it right away. All right. Next up, the closer tactic of all programmatic media is retargeting. So we've all been retargeted, 100 million times in our life. Nordstrom, Zappos, they're the kings and queens of retargeting. And you too should also be using retargeting. So you can come up with a variety of strategies. In B2B, I actually really like a sophisticated retargeting strategy where we're actually driving users who've previously visited the site to go back and visit other sections of the site. It's a great way to continue to share thought leadership style content while people are making those big decisions that maybe is a really long consideration cycle. Do know that retargeting is going to be impacted by Google's removal of third-party cookies. So you can be scared now, but keep using it while it's available. And if you ever need any help on building out a retargeting strategy, definitely reach out to somebody who can develop a nice pixel map and get you all set up and ready to go. Next. First-party data targeting. So first-party data is really using your client's own data on your campaign. So it could come from a CRM list. It could come from a DMP if your clients are using a DMP. It can even come from your website. So technically, retargeting is really just your own first-party data. But let's talk about first-party data more in the instance of like a CRM data. So when you're using your client's CRM data, you can segment it and develop creative that's great for upselling, cross-selling, or reaching lapsed consumers. This is also a tactic that's not going to be affected next year. And some of you guys might be going, well, how do I get this offline data into the digital space? Well, we work with a third-party company like LiveRamp who ingests your data, finds those users' digital fingerprints, and then sends us a hashed and anonymized file that gets ported over into the DSP, and then we can buy against it for display, native video, whatever those channels might be. I would highly recommend that you start talking to your clients now about cleaning up those CRM lists. It's so terrible when I'm talking to agency partners and they say, well, I know my client has a CRM list, but it's a mess. Get it together now because it's going to be so important come next year to be tapping into that data. You can also use your current CRM data to build out lookalike models. So using that offline data and creating a lookalike model to employ digitally, right now. We'd also work through LiveRamp to do that. So clean up that data and get it all ready for activation. Third-party data. Oh, goodness. So third-party data is wonderful. I mean, keep using it, but this is going to be the tactic that is hit the hardest next year. But really, every campaign should be using some sort of third-party data. It's how we're skewing the campaign, trying to reach very specific types of people. So data providers for third-party companies are like Bluekai, ComScore, Epsilon, MasterCard, Nielsen, Ibotta, are just some examples. And, other ideas for third-party data could be anything from behavioral-based, demo-based, or even job title. So, for example, it could be adults 25-54 or reaching moms with young kids. So the demo concept there. Behavioral might be shoppers who frequent Walmart or frequent Target, or people who practice Pilates. All examples of behavioral data targeting. And job titles. So I love job title targeting for my B2B clients. And so that could be reaching CFOs, IT decision makers. Nursing is really big right now with nurse recruitment campaigns, or potentially construction workers. So keep using third-party data while it's widely available. We'll figure out what to do next. The DSPs will make those decisions on how we can do this type of targeting at a later date, but use it now. In-market targeting is truthfully just a subset of third-party targeting. So it's reaching people who have an interest or seeking out products or services that your brand is selling. We highly recommend adding in-market targeting to any type of conversion campaign. This will be impacted by the deprecation of third-party cookies, with the exception of one DSP, which is Google Display and Video 360. Because of the way that they aggregate data from search and some other sources, it's not going to be affected. So continue using it now. It might be an idea to switch over to a different DSP come next year. Examples of in-market data could be in-market for an auto loan, in-market for brand new furniture or luxury jewelry purchases, perhaps in-market for office supplies, school supplies, or in-market for dog food for all those people who just got puppies in quarantine. Custom intent is really another subset of third-party targeting. This is a tactic that is specific to Google DV360 DSP. And what is really neat about this tactic is it goes beyond the predefined in-market categories that I had just named off earlier, like in-market for an auto loan or in-market for furniture. You actually put into the DSP a sampling of keywords and URLs that are very applicable to what your potential target market would be looking for. So it could be competitor URLs, it could be journalistic URLs, it could be keywords that you're already using from your search campaign. And then Google's special algorithms, who know everything that we're doing online, then build out this custom intent targeting tactic that you can then employ on any of your campaigns through that DSP. And again, it's not cookie based, so it might be something you want to look at testing now. Contextual targeting. This is my favorite slide because, I mean, first of all, it's a beautiful picture of, Hawaii and the beach, but let's really get down to it. Contextual targeting is when we align the journalistic content on the page to what your advertiser or brand is selling. So in this example, you'll see maybe I was online looking up the best beaches in Hawaii. And when I'm between articles on travelandleisure.com, I got served this full page interstitial ad for a hotel in Waikiki. So of course I clicked on it and I bought myself a really nice trip. I wish. Anyway, so contextual targeting is a tactic that you should definitely be doing now. It is not cookie based. There's a variety of contextual targeting data providers out there. So names like Peer39 and GrapeShot might be some that you're familiar with. What's great about both of those partners is during the pre-bid, when you're actually about to buy the impression, the tech reads the page and understands the semantics of it. So wanting to make sure that we're aligning in true content. So is it Jaguar the car, Jaguar the animal? Clearly very different there. I love contextual targeting. There's a lot of predefined segments that you can easily tap into that might make sense. So for my B2B clients, it could be something like vegan diet, family and parenting, DIYers, even seasonal content around March Madness or Halloween or Valentine's Day. For those B2B advertisers, I've seen contextual targeting around small business ownership and enterprise or commercial real estate or, PPP loans, which is really popular right now. So definitely test this one on any of your campaigns. Now, maybe you have a brand that doesn't fit really nicely into any of these parameters, and that definitely happens. I see this a lot with my B2B clients that have very technical based keywords that doesn't fall into just, a predefined segment. So the idea of custom contextual targeting is really repurposing that SEM keyword list that might have some of those technical words on it, working with a partner like a Peer39 or an Oracle to ingest that, build out a custom list, send it over to the DSP and buy against it. It's really not very expensive to activate this type of a tactic, maybe about a 25-cent CPM, but think how much more highly targeted your ads will be when they align in contextually endemic keywords. So Moving on to geotargeting, which I know some people might be rolling their eyes like, well, of course there's geotargeting, you know, and I doubt it anybody who's on this call is running global campaigns with hundreds of millions of dollars. We all have to be really thoughtful about who are we trying to reach and where do they live, where do they work, where do they play. So with the DSPs, we can target down to a country, state, DMA, zip code, or we could even build out geofences to deliver ads on mobile devices. An example that I really like within geotargeting is one of my QSR clients right now is testing out new menu items at one of their locations. And so we've built a very specific geo-target around that location to see how those ads perform and actually getting people to go in and order that new entree that's not available any other stores. So you can think about using your geo-targeting specific to creative messaging. And also a lot of clients, specifically in insurance and healthcare, I'm seeing right now, are trying to provide us with county lists because maybe their services only work within specific counties. County lists are great. We just need to get those translated over to a zip list. So there's a lot of easy online tools that can tell you all the zip codes in a county. You can even go to Zillow.com and it'll spit out all the zip codes. You just do a quick copy and paste and drop it into an Excel document. Moving on, historical geofencing. So if any of you guys have worked with AUDIENCEX in the past, we often call this a time machine. It's just kind of a cutesy name we've given for it. But the concept is very simple. Reaching users who were at a specific location on a certain day up to 2 years in the past. So maybe I want to reach people who attended this awesome concert. It was so crowded and packed. I mean, back in the good old days. And I want to reach people who are at that concert and maybe a few other concerts because later this year, concerts are going to start back up again and I'm going to have to do some ticket sales. So pulling the mobile device IDs of all the users who were at that concert venue and then messaging them with mobile ads about this new and upcoming concert. This is an incredible tactic for B2B as well. So reaching people who've been at a specific conference or trade show. And I know 2020 threw a wrench in many of those. So we can get data back from about early March, February and January 2020, and then into some of 2019. Do know that some of that 2019 data may not be super scalable just because people have gotten new mobile device IDs, but it's still worth a shot knowing that you had an audience of all like-minded people at the same location at the same time. Day and time parting. So this is really applicable to a lot of QSR type of clients or restaurant clients that are trying to drive immediate sales at a certain time. So for instance, this is an ad from Starbucks. And I get it. Yes, we did put in a Facebook ad or Instagram ad, but let's pretend like it's in the programmatic space. But you can also do day and time partying and partying in social as well. But this girl woke up in the morning, she got out of bed at 9:19 on her phone and she was served, a tea ad. And so later that day, she went to Starbucks and got a tea. So how relevant is that if you have a lunchtime push, a dinner push, weekend push? Also looking at day and time parting after a campaign goes live. So in the B2B space, after the campaign's been running for, let's say, 6 weeks or so, we might want to go back and look. Or maybe our ads not being engaged with, not being clicked on the weekends. Maybe we're not seeing conversions come through on the weekend. So maybe we should set up those parameters to really only deliver those ads when people are in that business mindset. So maybe cutting off Saturdays and Sundays and not serving ads after, 8 or 9 o'clock at night local time. So that's a great one to do by looking back at your historical data and then activating now. And again, it won't be affected by any of the cookies. Weather targeting. So we don't have to be a meteorologist for our clients' campaigns if we want to activate weather targeting, which is great because nobody has time for that. You can actually set up automatic rules around what weather's happening in a local geography and then have the campaign start and running while said weather is happening. So for example, Chicago last week just got a ton of ice and snow. How cool would that be if you were a tire company and knowing that Chicago had just gotten, inclement weather and started advertising your snow tires right away? You don't have to pick up the phone and tell anybody, turn it on now. It just automatically happened. Maybe there were hailstorms in Cincinnati, and while they're in the thick of it, ads for new roofing companies are starting to populate on people's mobile devices and tablets and desktops. So again, it's all automated. It's just setting up predefined parameters for what that weather looks like. And then we highly recommend that your creative also takes into account what's going on in those weather conditions. So if it's snowy out, make sure your creative's snowy. Nobody wants to see sunshine and people frolicking in the field. So make sure that there is that relevancy there. Inclusion lists. So inclusion lists is when you typically cherry pick sites that you definitely want your ads to run on. So there's a couple of different ways to look at this. You could cherry pick local and national news sites, maybe entertainment and pop culture, or content and blogs that is relevant to DIYers. So kind of think about it in categories. You can activate it in two different ways for inclusion lists. One, you could say, I only want my ads to run across this select list of websites. Very doable, but it could be very expensive and not very scalable. But you can definitely try it if you want. The other way that we actually would recommend activating this tactic is continue with lookalike modeling, retargeting, and third-party audiences and contextual, but add this on as a, if I can buy any of these websites, go ahead and buy it, as long as it works in the parameters of the campaign, that the user's in the correct geo and things like that. So kind of use it more as like a merchandising feature back to your clients of, we will try to buy ads on these different websites rather than a guaranteed. If you're really looking to be more accurate and wanting to ensure that you're able to buy across those sites, that's when we then need to start talking about PMP, private marketplace strategies and tactics. Moving on to exclusion lists. So obviously there's a lot of websites out there that you would just be so mortified if your brand ran it across it, or maybe just client preferences. Maybe there's a CEO that really particularly hates a certain media company, and we need to make darn sure that those ads don't run across any of those sites. So that's where you put together an exclusion list. Again, cherry pick those sites. We insert it into the DSP and we don't buy, against any of those. It's not always going to be 100% foolproof. Yes, it's not going to buy on that specific URL, but if you don't want to be around a very specific type of content, maybe it's mature audiences, violence, any of that kind of unsavory stuff, that's where we want to go ahead and employ different brand safety layers to make sure that not only are we on not specific websites, but we're also not falling in other content that doesn't align with your ideals and missions as a company. So even some of the greatest websites like the Wall Street Journal or USA Today that you would say is always brand safe, they might run a story, here and there that you don't want to align with. So that's where you really want to look at your brand safety strategy in addition to an exclusion list. Moving on, so we're all watching a ton of TV, myself included, but how neat is this that advertisers can use the TV exposure of what the audience has been exposed to, either from content and programming or by other ads that they have viewed, and then use that for conquesting purposes. So a great or really simplistic example would be Papa John's is trying to conquest Domino's, and they activate TV exposure, or TV retargeting is sometimes what it's called. So anytime a Domino's ad runs on linear television, pretty soon after, Papa John's ads will start to appear on your mobile device or on your laptop or whatever device you might be on. So try to get you to think about Papa John's and not going to Domino's. You can also use the same concept around programming, like I said. So maybe you want to align with a particular primetime program. Maybe it's the Bachelor series. Maybe it's, I don't know, Make Me a Millionaire, or whatever, is on primetime right now. Clearly, I'm not good at that. Or maybe you want to align with Super Bowl. And anybody who watches Super Bowl this upcoming Sunday will then later be served your messaging. So there's a lot of neat ways that we can activate TV exposure targeting. So definitely reach out if that's something that you'd like to include into your media plan. Moving on into app installations. So our phones are all so full of lots of apps that we use, lots of apps that we don't use. But what's really neat about this targeting tactic is you can build out audience personas and use it to advertise for your own app. So for example, maybe it's food delivery systems and I'm DoorDash and I want to reach people who already have Grubhub and Uber Eats on their phone and I want to try to get them to download DoorDash. So knowing what's on their phone already, I can then serve ads to those people who don't already have DoorDash. You can also use the same type to get people to re-engage with your app. You know who has your app, use those mobile device IDs and remind them to, log into the app or play the next level of the game, whatever it might be. Again, this is not cookie-based, so it'll continue on next year. Also, on a similar note is new mobile device targeting. So I actually just got a new iPhone 3 weeks ago. I got the 12, which I absolutely love. And I've been served a lot of ads for apps that I don't have on my phone or apps that I need to re-download that I've gotten rid of lately. And so this is able to be done on Google Display and Video 360 DSP. They're able to tell which are new mobile device IDs and then able to serve ads to those users who have a brand new phone. So obviously device IDs are being cycled out. I think the average user has it about 2.5 years. So this might be something that makes a lot of sense if it's applicable to your campaign and you're trying to get people to install new apps on it. This is actually the last targeting tactic that I was going to review. But before we go into answering questions, and I saw the little hand pop up quite a few times, so that makes me excited that you guys are engaged and have questions. I did want to plug our next webinar. So it'll be on March 9th at 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern, and it's advertising with Taboola. And Taboola is a native provider that we can buy programmatically. So be sure you register. I'm sure Michelle and the marketing team will be sending out an email blast soon. So be on the lookout for that, and I hope you can join us. Throwing it over to you, Michelle. Let's talk questions.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, that last webinar is specifically around native. It looks like the beginning of the title was chopped off, but it's native advertising best practices with Taboola. So that should be good. We will include the registration information in our follow-up email, which will include this recording. So let's see, we got a couple of questions, but again, as Kelly said, feel free to send them over. And if not, we can answer them later. But let's go back to third-party data. The question is, I've been frequently asked how data providers are able to collect this kind of data, and I never know what to say. Is there any sort of boilerplate response I should give to explain how data providers collect and classify their data?
That's a great question, and I wish I had like an easy answer for you, but each data provider aggregates their data differently. So let's start with a really easy concept, Visa and MasterCard. They know exactly what we're buying, when we're buying, and they're just anonymizing, all that information and porting it over to people who are, recent shoppers at Walmart or have recently made big purchases. So that's a pretty linear example. There's other examples out there like, how do I know if somebody is a CFO? It's a really great question. And so some of those more like B2B partners are relying on endemic websites that maybe are read by people in the financial industry. It's based on registration data. And so they're able to use that and figure out who are CFOs. A lot of times it does involve a lot of modeling that goes into it. So that's another example. There's another data provider called Ibotta. Some of you guys might be familiar with Ibotta. It's a cashback rewards app for buying specific items at grocery stores or Target or wherever it might be. So because you have to either link it to your loyalty card or your red card at Target, or you actually take a picture of your website or of your receipt, and you upload that to the app, they know exactly what I bought. They knew that I bought 3 bags of goldfish yesterday and a new pack of toilet paper because I just told Ibotta. They're going to aggregate all that data. And then when Ritz Crackers wants to try to conquest over goldfish crackers, they were going to send my data off to them, obviously not me, but anonymize me that I am a heavy purchaser of goldfish crackers. So every data provider really does it differently. I highly recommend if you do want to know their secret sauce, reach out to them. They all love to answer questions and hear from potentially new clients. I've done this myself by sending emails, as a new inquiry, and then just really asking those hard questions. Where do you get your data from? Who are your sources? How often is it refreshed? And any good data sales rep will be able to share all that information with you very transparently.
Yep, I totally agree. Prior to my AUDIENCEX time, I worked at Lotame, and that was a very common question from the data team was, where did this segment come from? So don't be shy about asking. I think that is good advice if you have questions. All right, next question. Would you recommend inclusion lists be applied to remarketing campaigns, or does it make more sense to have remarketing campaigns have full access to the internet to follow users around wherever they go?
That's a great question. As tempting as it is to put retargeting on just an inclusion list, don't do it. It's going to be really hard to scale because what you're trying to do is find, a small subset of users. And you could say, well, Kelly, I have, 100,000 people, but still you're trying to get those 100,000 people and remarket them when they're only on these specific websites. It's not going to be very scalable. So I would do any type of remarketing against open exchange to reach users wherever they are online. They might be on some random long tail site that you would never put into your inclusion list. But if it's relevant and applicable to them at that moment, because they have recently been to your site and maybe have a really good offer to get them to come back, try it, and you're not going to pay as much on a CPM wise either.
All right, awesome. All right, next question. We're talking about pixels. All right, I represent an agency where we always push for a pixel to be placed on a client's website as soon as we're in business for audience gathering, including lookalikes. But 90% of the clients resist until the last minute before the campaign launches. And I feel like we know the answer. Yes, this is very common problem.
I feel like
how would you recommend approaching this? How do you prove there's no harm in simple words?
So when I've had clients or agencies that reach out because their clients are pushing back, they're usually worried about what type of data and information is being scraped from their website. And so that's where you'd want to go in and pull some like legalese about what that pixel is actually doing on their site. Banks are a big one that get real scary about pixels. Well, once you can show them in black and white that I don't know it was Jane Doe that went to your website and transferred money from one account to the other. I really don't care. All I'm trying to learn is who's coming onto the website so we can learn more about them and did they perform certain actions. So usually it's just more than just here, believe me, I'm telling the truth. A lot of all the DSPs can share privacy policies about what their pixels collect and don't collect. So ask your DSP partner to send that over to you. And that should hopefully get through any of those issues. Another thing you could do is start writing into your statement of work with them is that pixels are mandatory and they need to be done ASAP. I know that sounds kind of mean, but they are so important to the health of the campaign.
All right. Great answer. Okay, those are all the questions we have right now. But if anyone has any others, feel free to reach out to us. We're going to be sending out the recording, as I said. The email address there on the screen, hello@AUDIENCEX, will come to me. We can forward it along and get it answered. Or you can just reply to the recording email if you have more questions. Or if you'd like to get in touch with Kelly, I'm happy to put you in touch. She can answer any questions about campaign strategy. She's a great resource. Kelly, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great. I hope it was really helpful for everybody. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out to AUDIENCEX if we can help with any strategies. Take care, all.
Have a good Wednesday, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.